Welcome to Marlene's Atelier. In this lesson, I'm going to be showing you how to sew the four-part darts or the front darts by hand using a little stitch called a pick stitch and a method that my mom taught me many years ago. And then we're going to move into bringing the cloth and the canvas together and creating some beautiful shape. You won't want to miss this. That's what's happening in the atelier. All right, so it's starting to get a little busy around this table with everything we're doing. But what we're going to work on today is getting the jacket canvassed, okay? But before we can dive into that, there's a few things we need to do. First, we have to sew the darts on the front of the jacket, okay? So we have a four-part dart that's right here, okay? And one of my very loyal viewers asked me last week what a four-part dart was. And so here, what it is, it's spelled F-O-R-E, part, four-part. And that means the front. Four-part means the front. So the four-part of the trousers, the jacket, the waistcoat, whatever, okay? So we have our four-part dart. This dart, we're going to have to match our pattern, okay? So we can't just zippity-doo-dah and put it all together. We're going to have to baste it so that when we do sew it, all of our pattern is matching beautifully, okay? The side body dart over here, if you remember when we were patterning, this is an offset dart. In other words, one side is wider than the other, okay? So on one side, from the midpoint of the dart, it's 1 centimeter, and from the other side, it's a 0.5 centimeter, okay? So we have to be very diligent about sewing it that way. This dart is not going to match because it's at an angle, okay? So that's the number one first thing that we have to do is get the darts in. And I'm going to show you a way that my mom taught me when I was a little girl, because I hand sew my darts, okay? And so when you hand sew, you have to do a little bit of sewing at the top and the bottom so that you can get the points like super duper sharp. All right, so I'm going to show you what my mom taught me so you could get those really sharp and really thin and nice. Lastly, what I want to do before I do any of that is I want to put a little piece of fusible interfacing over our pocket position, okay, obviously on the other side. The reason I'm doing that is because this cloth, the weave, it's not super loose, but it's certainly not tight. And we run the risk because when we go to put our pocket in, that is also going to be hand tailored. I'm not going to machine the pocket in, okay? And so we run the risk of everything fraying because this cloth the weave is not as tight. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to transfer the pocket position, okay, to the other side, all right? And I'm just going to use just a touch of blue chalk right here so I can see it because the white blends in so incredibly easily, okay? So here and here, here's the other end of my pocket. I'm just going to transfer that as well. All right, just put a very small blue cross there so I can see it. And then I can take my ruler and just bring those two together, okay? So just a very light blue line, just so I can see where the fusible interfacing should go, all right? Because I want to get it right in the middle here, okay? So let's make sure that it's nicely, in fact, I can just fold this in half, just put a little line here so I know what the middle point is, okay? It's that easy just to do that, all right? And then stick that right on the middle of our pocket position like that. There we go. All right, and that's easy. So if you're working with, again, you know, our cloth is not, it's not like a super 160, you know, where the weave is really tight and so forth at all. And we're putting a welt pocket in. And so a welt pocket looks like this, okay? Or on this guy over here, all right? And so this is gonna be all hand sewn. And like I said, I wanna make sure that this is really secure so that when we go to cut the pocket open, it's being held and it's not gonna fray. Because if it frays, we run the risk of it, you know, fraying under the pocket here, and we don't want that to happen, okay? So it's better to be safe than sorry. So yes, I will admit that fusible interfacing does have its advantages, few and far between. All right, so let me show you here what we're gonna do to prepare this 4-part dart, okay? Hopefully you can see. I'm gonna highlight it here with my ruler, okay? The dart actually runs through the middle of, you know, this plaid here, okay? This little square, all right? There's 5 little lines, if you will, stripes. And so I've run my dart right through the middle of this stripe. And what I'll do is I'll just highlight this here so you can see it a little bit, okay? So there's the middle of my dart. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that when let's see, where is he? There he is. When I sew this together, all right, I want to make sure that it's matching. And if you can see here, I've already prepared, this is what the garment's going to look like once it's all, you know, canvassed, okay? So you can see the dart here, all right? It matches perfectly across, all right? And that's what we want. And it matches this way as well, the midpoint being here at the waist and the very, very tip up here, which just blends in and it you know, and just fades into nothing, okay? That's what we want. But in order to do that, we've got to base this closed and match everything before we get on the machine, okay? So it's not hard, it's super easy. We're just gonna pick a stripe, okay? Here, I'm gonna come out a bit. So my dart is now here at the fold facing me, okay? And I'm gonna come out to this next area here. And actually, I think I'm gonna come even closer right here. All right, so what I wanna do is bring my needle in and match this perfectly right here, okay? So I've got my needle coming out and I'm matching the pattern. From top to bottom, all right? And that's all there is to it. It's really just a matter of taking a stitch, okay? We'll tack this here. And then my next stitch I'm going to match again here perfectly, beautifully, wonderfully. All right. And match my next stitch, etc., etc. So I'm going to do this and work my way all the way down the length of the dart. This way I'm assured that when I go in and I sew this, both the very top on the machine and then when I hand sew the rest, it's all perfect. It all matches perfectly, okay? Right down to the little teeniest little dot here. Okay, there's little dots. And we get into the details of this pattern so that when I pull it back, it's going to look perfect. Okay? So that's what I'm going to continue to do here. All right, so now that I have this all basted in And if I just pull this back, you can see that this is matching here very beautifully. All right. Now, obviously, that's not where my dart is. That's just where I matched the plaid, all right, to keep it in place while I do sew it. So what I'm going to do is I just want to come in and mark this so I know exactly where I'm starting here and ending, all right? And I can actually, if I turn this, let's see, how am I getting on the machine? Yeah, that way. All right. So what I can do is almost, what I can do is I can chalk in the actual dart, line of the dart, so that when I'm on the machine, I know where to stop and start, if you will. Okay? So I'm just going to do that real quick here. Easy breezy. All right. So now that I have all this ready to go, we're going to jump over to the machine and I'm going to show you how to get the tips of, or the very points of our dart super duper sharp. Okay? So I'll meet you over there. All right. So here I am at my machine here. Okay? Now, I've got this super duper close up, okay, because I really want you to see what I'm doing. What I've done here is I've got quite a bit of thread that I've left because we're going to use that thread to tie, okay? So I'm just going to get that thread put aside here and leave a bit, all right? And then right here at the very top, okay, this is where my dart starts. So let's get rid of this mark stitch because if we don't, what's going to happen is it's going to be stuck in there forever if we don't get it out. Okay? I think that's out. All right. Maybe not. That little guy, look at him. Let's get him out of there. They're impossible. If they get sewn in, they're impossible. Okay? So we're going to start right here. And what I want to do, okay, is I want to bring my foot down and get my needle in to where it's literally just catching the very, 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 very edge, okay, of my cloth. I could almost pull it out completely. Let's see here. Could almost pull, it's like one strand is holding it right there. Okay, this is really important because we want to start on the very, very edge of the cloth, okay, so that we don't get a dimple, all right? Now, all I'm going to do, I'm not going to back stitch at all. All I'm going to do is I'm going to come down a couple of centimeters. So let's just say right to the end here, okay? And I have a little chalk line that's super hard to see, even for me right now, but I'm staying really close. It's, you know, the dart is only 1.5 centimeters wide. So, you know, it's only 3/4 of a centimeter at the midpoint here. All right. So we don't have to come out really far into the cloth. So I'm just going to come down to about here and stop. All right. And I'm going to pull this out and up. That's all I need. It's like maybe 2 centimeters, if that. Okay. And then I'm going to snip this as well and leave myself a little bit of thread. All right. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this side as well. Just going to stick a little pin here so I know where to start. And we're going to do the same thing. Okay, we're going to leave a little bit of thread, like so. Okay, I'm going to start right there. I want to get this right on the edge of my cloth. So as you can see, hopefully here, this is just sticking in the very, very, I mean, I might have a couple of fibers there, and that's it, all right? So now, again, we're only going to come down maybe, you know, a couple of centimeters, keeping it pretty close. All right, that's all we need to do right there. And pull this out like so. All right, and trim it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to tie our strands or the edges of our thread together. Okay, we're just going to make a couple of knots. That's all we need to do. Okay, now what's nice about this is you don't have a lot of bulk, okay, at the end at all. You know how like sometimes when you backstitch it gets real bulky? This totally keeps that from happening, okay? You don't even know that you've sewn this. And again, the reason I do this is because if I'm hand sewing this, which I'm going to do, I can't get the sharp point that I want in hand sewing than I can from a machine. All right. So I come in and I do this, and then I get a really sharp, clean point, and it's very secure, and it'll hold forever and ever and ever. And then I can come in and baste and pick stitch this, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, so now that we've got our very edges or very tips of our dart sewn, okay, machined, now what we're going to do is we're going to baste the actual dart shape in, okay? So what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to just use a little bit of blue chalk here so that I can see clearly what I'm doing. And hopefully you can too. This is really getting up close here. But when we're hand sewing something, what we're going to do is we're going to baste it, which I'm going to do here. We're going to top stitch it, all right? And then we're going to pick stitch it, something called pick stitching. Now, if you don't know how to pick stitch, I'll tell you very honestly, you're not going to be able to see me do it because the pick stitch is a very eensy beensy, teeny weeny stitch, okay? It's very, very small and it's meant to be, all right? It adds a decorative finish, and at the same time, it is also a very strong stitch, okay? So if you don't know how to pick stitch, there is a video that will pop up on your screen right here that shows you how to do a pick stitch, all right? And you can watch that and then you'll see exactly what I'm doing, all right? So here, what I'm doing now is I'm basting my dart. So I'm basting the shape of my dart, and I'm just using some basting thread on the single, okay? And using some pretty small stitches. And I want those stitches to be close together so that the shape of the dart doesn't shift around a whole lot, okay? So I'm going to baste this first, like so. All right, we'll get that knocked out real quick here. Pretty fast. We want to make sure when we're working with our dart that our lines and what we're basting are super, super duper straight, okay? We don't want our dart to look jiggly or wiggly. So the smaller and the closer you can get your stitches together, the better, okay? Because it makes the dart and the shape of the dart really, really, you know, strong, okay? All right, so here, and I'm just getting a little of the tightness out by running my finger along. I don't want anything to be tight, okay? Not at all. Okay, so there's that. There's our first baste. And now what I can do is I can take the base that we did to line everything up out. We don't need that anymore, okay? And it'll just get in the way. All right, so we'll get that out. And now if I turn this over, okay, you can see we've got the shape of the dart in real nice here now, okay? Now what I've done is I've taken the seam, okay, and I've pushed the dart seam, if you will, back towards the side, okay, the side of the jacket. All right, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to baste this. I'm going to top stitch this, okay? So now I don't have to start all the way down here at the bottom because that's where I machined, all right? So I'm just coming up right from where, I'm picking up right from where I left off machining, the very end of my dart. And again, I'm just going to tack this off. And the reason I'm holding this in my hand, okay, is so that I can open the seam as I baste and keep everything really super duper sharp and straight. All right, I want this dart to be really, really super tight and straight. So my finger, if you will, my index finger is underneath and it's holding the dart seam over, okay? And my thumb up top is helping me to open the dart as I stitch, okay? So that's what my working and my non-working hand are up to here. And it's real important. We wouldn't want to base this on the board because we have much more control over the dart and its shape, okay, by holding it in our hand. Also, I'm just double checking to make sure that my pattern here, my plaid, is matching up nicely. And my hand, my non-working hand holding the garment can help ensure that everything stays lined up nicely. Okay? That's all. Super easy. All right? And here I'm just doing a running baste, if you will. Again, keeping my stitches small, close together, and I'm coming off the edge of my seam here about 2 or 3 millimeters, okay? Because I have to make room, I have to leave room for my pick stitch. So if I'm right on the edge, I'm not gonna have any room to pick stitch. So I'm coming off the edge, like I said, like just a couple millimeters, leaving myself some room there, okay? And then I'll just come up here, get this so you can hopefully see what's going on. All right, come up to the top where I finished off and I started machining. All right, and just tack that off nicely here. Now, before I start pick stitching, what I have to do is, there we go, I have to take out the first baste. Because if I don't, all right, I won't be able to get it out later. Here's my first baste, okay, here. So if I don't take this out and I pick stitch the garment, it's going to be almost impossible to get this baste out. So it's better to just do it right now. Just get it out of here. We don't need it anymore. It did its job. It helped us put everything together real nice. Okay? And then what I like to do as well before I start pick stitching is I like to just press this so I can get a really nice crisp line, okay? So let me just drag my iron in over here. I'm going to take my little dipping cloth, if you will, okay, and just put a little bit of water on here. And because I'm working on the back, I don't need to use a press cloth, okay? If we were working on the front, we would definitely be using a press cloth. And this also gives me the opportunity to open up my dart at the top here where I machined it, and at the bottom to make sure it's nice and straight. And it should just literally disappear into the garment. So if we turn it over and we look, this just disappears. We can't even see where it ends. There's no dimple, nothing. And that looks really nice. Now, if we opened this up and we didn't like how it looked, maybe I didn't sew this straight. Or maybe my pattern wasn't lining up nice, okay? I can take it out and do it again, all right? In fact, if you wanted to be even more cautious, don't take your first baste out until after you press everything. Make sure you like it, all right? And then you can take your first baste out after that. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take out these mark stitches at the waist, okay? And the mark stitch at the top. I'm going to leave the one at the bottom because that's part of my pocket position, okay? All right, so now what we're going to do is a little pick stitching. And I have here some beautiful hand silk that I'm going to use, okay? It's just black. And we'll just take a piece of that. And the type of needle that I use to pick stitch is very, very small. So you can see if I compare that to my basting needle, okay, see if I can get these up here in front of the camera for you to see without stabbing myself terribly. All right, so here's my basting needle, okay, and here I'll hold them down here so where you can see them. And my needle for hand sewing, pick stitching, you can see they're much smaller. All right, and that is so that we can be really agile. We can work very quickly when we don't have a big needle getting in the way. All right, for basting, those are great. But for pick stitching, cross stitching, all the real intricate hand stitches, you want something a little smaller. Now, when you're working with hand silk, what you want to do is you want to press it off a little bit beforehand. And the reason is because they wax it, okay? It's actually waxed. And you want to get the wax off beforehand, okay? So that you don't get it all over your cloth. This is in part why my baby looks like it does, okay? All right. Okay, so now let's start pick stitching. And I'm just going to put a little knot on the end of this, okay? And come up from underneath. And again, I'm going to start pick stitching right where I stopped machining, okay? So really what a pick stitch is you're coming out, you're right on the edge of, you're right on the very edge of the seam here, okay? I mean, I'm talking like a millimeter off the edge, which is super duper teeny weeny. What we're doing is we're coming out, and where our thread has come out, we're putting our needle in and we're trying to go back in basically in the same place that the thread came out, okay? And then I'm coming forward maybe 2 or 3 millimeters at the most, okay? I want my stitches to be really close together because this is going to be holding the dart in for the life of the garment. And so the idea is that you don't really see a stitch. You just see an impression, all right? It's almost like you see a little divot, or a dimple might be a better explanation, okay? So again, if you check out the video that I've attached here in this, on how to do a pick stitch, it gives you a very, very up close and personal account of how to do this stitch, okay? And then that way you can do it for yourself. I use the pick stitch for all my darts, my seams. So when we sew the back and the front of this garment together, I'll be pick stitching it. You're probably like, really? I know it's a lot of pick stitching, isn't it? But I love it. And it gives it such a beautiful finished look. It's the one thing that just differentiates bespoke tailoring, true bespoke tailoring from everything else. You know, I mean, it's easy to get on a machine and just zip it, right? But you don't get that clean, beautiful, gorgeous, tight finish. And, you know, I have to say, every garment that I've ever made by hand, and I've pick stitched the seams, I've never had a problem with those seams opening up on me. You know, so that's really a good thing, right? The other place you can use a pick stitch is when we go to finish the front of the garment. Okay, here, all along the edge here and on this jacket over here is all pick stitched. Okay, and that's to hold the two layers of the facing, if you will, onto the main part of the jacket. All right, around the lapel in the front. Gives you a beautiful, clean, you know, finished edge. And we'll be getting into how we do that as well. So I'm going to finish pick stitching this dart. And when I'm finished with all that, what we're going to do is we're going to start canvassing. So I won't make you sit here and watch me do this. You'll be bored to death. So I'll finish this up and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to canvas. Great. The darts are in. I think they look pretty nice. I have no complaints about them. And now what we want to do is we want to start canvassing. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to give you a little bit, because we always want to talk about the reason why we're doing something, right? Obviously, we're putting the canvas and the cloth together because the canvas has more shape than the cloth, and the canvas is what gives the jacket, the coat, its shape overall, right? But just like we did when we were pad stitching, okay, and we brought the body canvas and the chest canvas together, and we added some ease in there so that the two, even though they're pad stitched together, they still can move independently of one another. And that's what makes the garment comfortable. That's why I'm always, you know, ditching on fusible interfacing, because there's none of that happens with fusible interfacing. Okay, so I'm always ditching on it. So what we want to do here is, when we're canvassing, is we want to do the same thing. We want to bring the cloth and the canvas together, all right? And in doing so, in canvassing them, we're creating ease between the cloth and the canvas, so that even though at the end of the day, the cloth is going to be held onto the canvas by various points, okay? Let's say the pocket, you know, when we come in and we turn back the edge and we put the lapel, or excuse me, the facing on, the sleeve, the shoulder, etc. Bring the back in. All that is why this is going to be held together. And eventually we're going to be taking the basting stitches out, okay? So we're creating that ease so that the two can work independently or be independent in some ways, right? But still work harmoniously. In other words, we want the cloth and the canvas to be interdependent of one another. And that's what creates comfort in a garment, all right? So that's the why. That's the why. Now let's get to the how, okay? So the first thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that our canvas is lining up, all right? Or our cloth is lining up with the canvas, okay? Now we have darts, so the shape has changed a little bit, okay? But if you remember, when we were putting together the canvas, we drew a break line, and if you can still see it, it's here. I'm working on the right side, so it's blue. It's a little easier to see, all right? And so what we want to do is we want to line the break line up that is on the cloth with the break line that is here on the canvas, okay? So that, because that's where that belongs. And also the button position needs to be lined up, okay? Now there's one little caveat to that, and that is that I'm going to actually bring the button position on the cloth up slightly, about a ½ centimeter up from the button position on the canvas. Now, why do I do that? Well, when I start canvassing, we're going to be doing some smoothing, okay? We're going to be using our finger to smooth the cloth and bring the canvas together. Because remember, again, the canvas has more shape than the cloth does, okay? So we really have to work hard to bring these two pieces together, adding a little bit of ease, but making sure that we don't have a lot of, cloth that's just hanging out in between either, okay? So I'm gonna be pushing this, and by the time I'm done smoothing and so forth, the button position on the cloth should line up very beautifully with the button position on the canvas. So we're gonna have about a ½ centimeter of deviation here, if you will, to use a math term that I knew so long ago, right? All right, so let me just double check here. Again, I'm just lining up the break line with the cloth, on the cloth, with the break line on the canvas, making sure all is well. Okay, that's really important because we don't want a huge gap between where we've put the we don't want to have a huge gap from where we put the chest canvas and the demet and the break line, right? We said we wanted 1 centimeter between those two. So we have to make sure that this is lining up exactly. Because if it doesn't, then we have to take everything, all our canvassing out, and do it again, which I don't like doing. I don't like repeating my work. No one does. All right, so there, that looks good. That looks nice. I'm just walking this down to make sure it's all in line. We're a little bit, about a ½ centimeter up off the button position, so that looks fine. Okay, so I think we're in good shape here. All right, okay, very nice. Very nice. Straighten that out. All right, okay, so we're going to be doing a series of 4 bastes, okay? The first baste that we're going to do, we're going to start about 3 or 4 centimeters off of our shoulder line, okay? Because later on we have to bring the front and the back of the coat together, and we need room here at the shoulder line. We don't want stitches coming right up to it, okay? So I'm just going to come down a little bit below my seam. I did kind of sneak in sewing on my, my shoulder, if you will. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start midway between, okay, and then I'm going to come down in between the dart and the break line, okay. I'm going to stop here at the waist, and then I'm going to work straight down, okay. So it doesn't hurt. You know my feelings on guidelines. It doesn't hurt to put a little guideline in to help guide you, if you will, so you're not making a big mess out of your mark stitches. And in fact, I think I'd like mine to come down a little bit further, like so. There we go. That's nice. That's better. Just curve it around a little bit, okay? Like that. Perfect. And then we're going to go straight from there, okay? So again, I'm using basting thread, all right? It's on the single. I'm going to start here, like I said, a few centimeters below my shoulder line, so I don't have a big mess there. We also have to take into consideration that we have to put a shoulder pad in as well, okay? So we want to make sure that the shoulder pad isn't going to get in the way either, okay? All right, so I'm going to tack this off. And, whoop, well, that's not what I was expecting to happen there. Come here, you. There we go. All right. All right, so what we want to do here is we want to take our finger and we want to press pretty firmly and smooth this down, okay? I'm coming down about 3 or 4 centimeters is as long as my stitch is, tops. Doesn't need to be longer than that, okay? And I'm going to just keep smoothing with my finger and stitching, okay? Smoothing with my finger and stitching. So this is where we're really pushing the 2 pieces, the cloth and the canvas together. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because this is where we have a lot of the shape that's taking place, right? Is right through the chest area. So we want to create, we're trying to bring these 2 pieces together and smooth the cloth over and around the canvas, okay? But at the same time, we're adding that ease, okay? So we're giving it, and if you were to ask me about the pressure, how much pressure am I, it would be like a, well, I don't know. If you gave somebody a good poke in the chest, right? You just poke, if you figure how you poke somebody in the chest, that would be the amount of pressure you'd want to use here. I hope you don't go around poking people in the chest, but I couldn't think of anything else. I don't know. Don't go around poking people in chests. You'll start a big confrontation, and then I'll be getting all sorts of emails and so forth. So, okay. So here, all right, we're right here at the button position now. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack this off because I want to make sure that all of this ease that I just put in between these 2 points is going to be kept in there. Okay. We want to make sure that that ease isn't going to start spreading down here because we want a little bit more ease up here, okay, than we do down here. So I'm going to take a little jump over here. I'm just jumping over slightly, okay? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth my cloth with my hand. The other thing that I want to do, okay, if you remember, when I cut this canvas, all right, the front edge lined up with the canvas perfectly, okay? What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to bring my bottom back slightly off of the canvas, okay? Just back slightly. Now, why do I do that? Because it's going to help the plaid, the stripe in the plaid look straight, okay? I know that sounds crazy because we're actually angling it back slightly, but it does help the front of the stripe in this plaid, that's running vertically here when we wear it, look nice and straight. So we always kind of smooth it back, and it's probably maybe about 1 to 1.5 centimeters off the edge of the canvas. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to smooth and baste. All right. Smooth and baste. And if you were to ask me again, I would say it would be like petting a dog, okay? If you pet a dog, that's, you give them a nice pet, that would be how the pressure that you would use in smoothing. I have my little dog Pebbles, and she loves being pet and scratched and hugged and kissed. She's a great little girl. Okay? So it's a nice little rhythm that you get into where you're smoothing and stitching. Okay? Smooth. In fact, I could probably grab a weight here and put this on to hold the jacket or the coat from moving too much. Okay? So again, a smooth and baste. Smooth and baste. All the way down. Now what we want to do when we get down here to the bottom is we want to stop short a centimeter or so from the length, okay? Because you have to remember, we're going to be doing some work down here at the length, and we don't want our basting stitches to get in the way, all right? So when my length is like right here, and so I'm just going to stop short about 1 centimeter. Just move that up a little bit. This coat is very long. I feel like I'm like, ugh. All right, keep moving it. All right, so that's that. And that I'm going to just stop right about there is good. All right, so now, just in doing this one baste, okay, if we turn everything over, all right, you can see here that we've got some really, you see the ease that we have up here? Isn't that lovely? Can you see how it's wrinkled here through the stitches? That's what we want, all right? We want to have that ease through here. That's lovely, all right? And here as well, you can see how things have a little bit more of a wrinkle up here, all right? That's perfect. That's what we want, okay? All right, so that's our first baste. Excellent. And we're just going to double check. And yes, my button position is lined up beautifully here. Yes, that's great. My break line is still lined up perfectly. So that's great. Okay. The other thing I didn't mention is when you mark or when you're canvassing, you're always working from the top down. Okay. Never from the bottom up, always from the top down. Okay. Always. All right. Now, our second baste is going to be right here along the break line, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a little guide for myself that comes back off the break line 1.5 centimeters, okay? So I'm just going to chalk that in. Now, why 1.5? Well, again, if you remember, when we put the canvas together, all right, we came back off the break line on the canvas 1 centimeter, yeah? Because we didn't want the canvas to impede, one of my favorite words, on the break line. And so here coming back 1.5 centimeters makes sense because we want to stay on the canvas, right? And then down here along our front opening, okay, I'm going to be staying away from the front edge here, the front opening, by 2 centimeters. Okay, now again, the reason for that is because I have to come back here, down here, and turn back the edge of the jacket, and I need enough room to cut. I'm going to be cutting the canvas back a little bit, all right, and I need enough room to do all that. So 2 centimeters is a good amount of room, okay? All right, let me get a little bit more thread, and then we'll knock this out. All right, so now that we have the first baste in here, and we're putting another baste in, which means that we're going to be smoothing in a couple of directions, okay? Because I don't want there to be a lot of, can't see my thread here. Hold on. There we go. I don't want to have a lot of cloth gathered up between my first baste and my second baste, right? So I'm going to use my weight here to help me. And I'm going to start back at the beginning here, okay? And I'm going to tack off right here where I started last time. Very nicely. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth this over, and I'm just going to do like a little pad stitch from this point here to secure. What I'm basically doing is securing the neckline, okay? I want to make sure that my neckline here is where it needs to be, okay? I hope that makes sense. So I'm just smoothing this over to make sure that everything between here and here, okay, is supported. Just like that. Okay? Really simple. Whoops. Let's make sure we don't get that all tight. There we go. All right. So we're just securing that area. And right up to my 1.5 centimeter mark. Okay, there. And then I can tack this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be smoothing this over towards the break line. Okay? And following my very faint chalk line. All right. And again, my basting stitches are probably, 3 centimeters long, tops, 4 tops. Okay. We don't want these basting stitches to be too far apart. Otherwise, you're not going to create the amount of ease that you need to, okay? It's really important. All right, so that's that. And as I get down here, past the canvas, towards the button position, I'm kind of smoothing just out and down very slightly, okay? All right, and then here at the button position, I'm 2 centimeters off the edge here. This stripe right here is about 2 centimeters off my edge. So I'm just going to tack this once again, okay? And I'll finish up the rest of this by just smoothing it the same way. I just want to make sure that there is no, I don't necessarily need to smooth it out. I still want to continue to smooth it down, but I want to make sure that there isn't anything in between here. In other words, I don't want this cloth to be bunched up like this, okay, in between. I want this to be nice and smooth. So we can smooth it more so like out and down if you want. Sometimes we'll smooth it out, sometimes we'll smooth it down. Okay? Just so that we achieve that. That's really important. All right? Okay. Pretty simple. You got to kind of, if you know why you're doing what you're doing, it makes it so much easier. If you know the reason why you're canvassing, right, is to create ease between the cloth and the canvas, and have everything nice and smooth, right? So we don't have cloth, gapping up like this in between. That's really important. And knowing that, I think, makes a lot of tailoring, knowing the whys, okay, makes a lot of tailoring much, much easier to master. A lot of times if you don't know, if you're like, I don't know why on God's green earth I'm doing this, then chances are, if you don't know why you're doing something, then you're probably doing it wrong, unfortunately. Okay? All right. And I have weights all over. But the weights are good. If you have some weights to use, definitely do, because they really help kind of secure things as you work. They do help. And again, here, I'm just going to stop short at the bottom, from the bottom, okay? This will be my last stitch right here. Okay, here's my length right here, if you can't see the marked stitches, okay? All right, so that's base number 2. Base number 3 is super easy. We're just going to baste right here along our dart, okay? And again, we're going to smooth this out really nice, all right, along the forepart dart, okay? So that's a super easy one to do. All right. I don't even need that much thread. sure I can thread my bloody needle. All right. All right. So again here, I'm just going to take my finger. I'm going to tack this off at the top of the dart. Okay. And I'm working on the opposite side of the seam. Okay. So here's the seam right here on this side. I'm coming in right next to the seam. Okay. And again, in doing that, I want to make sure, even though this is a really short little area here, I want to make sure that there isn't any cloth coming up in between, you know, my first baste and the dart, okay? So we can smooth it down and just always check just to make sure that there's nothing gathering up in between there, okay? And again, I'm going to stop a little bit short of the bottom because my pocket is right here, okay? And I want to make sure that my baste remains intact throughout the life of me tailoring. And so I have to come in here and cut the pocket open, yeah? So I'm going to just stop a little short there so I don't open this up later on, okay? All right, so here's my pocket position right here, okay? All right. So far, so good, yeah? So far, so good. So our last baste is a bit of a doozy because we got to do a couple of things with this baste, okay? With this baste, if you remember, when we were canvassing or when we were putting our darts in our canvas, right? And I told you, we have this dart right here. See this dart? Right? But we don't have a dart. We don't have a dart in the cloth, okay? So what we need to do, we're going to add a little bit of ease, a little bit more ease around the arm side, okay? So what this base is going to look like is we're not going to come straight across. We need to leave room for the shoulder pad here. Let me just drag this down a bit so you can see. We need to leave room for the shoulder pad because that's coming into play here, right? Shoulder pad's coming up in this area. And we also need to leave enough room to work on the sleeve, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to angle my stitch down like this, all right? And around the arm side, leaving several centimeters, okay? And then what I'm going to do when I get here over by my second dart, okay, this side body dart, is I'm going to come down and around. Now I have to remember my canvas is stopping like right here, okay? So I want to come through around the middle of the pocket. So here's my pocket. So I want to angle and come through the middle of the pocket and then come straight down here. All right? So this is what this is going to look like. Something like, see where it is. There we go. Right here. And then we're going to come straight down. Boom, 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 boom. All right? So this one's a little bit of a doozy because we're smoothing and we're adding some ease and we're adding more ease in an area and we have to be really careful. I did that on over here, okay, as well. And I have to make sure that the amount of ease that I'm putting in this side is the same that I put over here, okay? Now this has already been pressed and I put it up so that you could see what it looked like when it was done. But if you're doing this and you don't have a lot of experience, do both pieces and then look and see, okay? All right, so again, I'm starting where my first baste was, and I'm tacking this off, okay? And again, to give myself a little stability here, I'm going to use this weight. All right, so I'm going to smooth. Again, I want to smooth out a little bit because I have my first stitches here, okay? So I'm going to smooth out. And I'm just going to do a couple of bastes, all right? And now what I want to do, okay, is I want to take and bring a little bit of ease. You see this? Right here. See that little bit of ease? It's a little bit too much actually, just a tiny bit less. Tiny bit, just use your finger, all right? And bring that ease. We have to smooth it over. So if we do this, we smooth it over and bring it up and around like that. There's a little tiny bit of ease there. Perfect. And then capture it like that. Okay? Okay, just like that. And then smooth this around and bring your hand up and around and bring a little bit more ease into play right there and capture it. All right? And I'm going to do this one more time right here. I'm going to smooth it out and then just up and around, capture a little bit more ease right there. Okay? That's it. But that's a little bit of a doozy. It takes a little bit of practice. All right? Now, of course, whenever you put ease into anything, and I think I've said this before, okay? Whenever you put ease into anything, you have to press it out, okay? You have to press it out. Okay, so now when we get over here, all right, to the bottom edge of the arm side, if you will, just tack it again. So we're gonna keep all that together, this nice ease right here. Later on, we're going to be coming in here to the arm side, okay? Our armhole. What we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be chain stitching around the armhole, and we're gonna take that ease that we put in here and we're gonna capture it in the chain stitch, all right? So we're gonna have that ease is going to be, we're gonna create it. We created it by putting a dart here, okay? We captured it, and now with the chain stitch, we're gonna lock it in. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, all right? Tailoring is so cool. It is the coolest thing ever. Everything makes sense, okay? All right, so let's finish this out. We're gonna be, again, let's make sure this doesn't, there we go. Smoothing, again, see my first base is here, and then I have, right here's my dart, so I'm smoothing over and down slightly, okay? The other thing you wanna make sure of, and you can check, if you're not doing this right, what you'll end up seeing is you'll start seeing like ripples, okay, that are captured in between your base. And if you're getting ripples in terms of how you're pushing things, you're pushing too hard, all right? You're smoothing too hard. You want, when you're all done, when this is all done, this should look smooth. It should all be smooth, okay? All right. So don't go overboard. Don't go crazy. All right. And as I come down, once again, to where my pocket is, okay, I just want to keep my basting away from the pocket. So I'm going to tack it here, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to the other side, boop, right here, all right? And I'm going to tack it here. So that way, when I go in to do the pocket, which is our next step, which is going to be fun, okay? That way, and I'll tack it here. When this gets cut, I still have my nice stitches, my canvas stitches here, uninterrupted, okay? All right, so now all we need to do is just finish smoothing this the rest of the way down. That's it. Not too bad, right? Not too bad at all. And the only thing you want to make sure of here is that you're staying on the canvas, because my canvas edge is not too far away here, okay? And again, you want to make sure as you're smoothing that you don't have any cloth built up between the last base here, okay, and the ones you're putting in. So just keep your eye on that as well. All right. The other thing is you want to make sure that your basting stitches are not tight, okay? Just let them lay there. Just let them lay there. Okay? And just like the other two bastes here that came down to the bottom, I'm just going to stop short right here of the length and tack this off. Okay? All right. That's it. That's canvassing. It's not bad, right? It's pretty fun, actually. I like canvassing. All right. So I told you what we need to do now, okay? We've got all this in. What we need to do is we need to give this a nice press, okay? Give this a nice press. So we're going to break out the baby again, okay? And I'm going to start right up here because remember, I have this ease in around my arm side now, right? And we're going to use a press cloth because we never want to use the iron directly on the cloth. Even if you have a silicone shield or, you know, one of these guys on the bottom of your iron, forget it. I don't trust it. Okay? So I'm using a nice amount of water here, just putting it on the press cloth, and then coming in with the iron and getting all of that ease to shrink together now. Okay? So I told you we're going to be pressing a lot, right? Of course. And now that we have all this beautiful shape in our garment, we don't want to like throw it down on the table and let it all collapse, right? That's why whenever I'm working, I always put my work on a mannequin. So that the shape can stay maintained. I mean, there's no sense going in and pressing everything and then just throwing it down on the table and letting it get all wrinkled up. I mean, it's kind of, what's the point, right? It doesn't make much sense. You spend all that time to just lump it down. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's nice. You know, you come up into the workroom and you're like, oh, you know, that looks good. It inspires me. When I see my work in progress, it inspires me to keep going and to do a good job and to make it beautiful, you know? And it's just so satisfying to see something come together. I mean, if you look here, you're like, wow, that's already got some really nice shape to it. You know what I mean? And it's just we're only like few steps into the whole process of tailoring here. And you can already see beautiful results. Okay, so here I'm just going to put this around the curve of the baby and press that out nice. And again, as always, whenever we put water on, we want to make sure that we're pressing it all off. Okay, that it's nice and dry. We don't leave anything damp because otherwise then you're just not accomplishing anything. All right, so I'm going to finish pressing this. I'm going to work all the way down to the bottom here and get everything pressed out nice. And that's going to do it for canvassing. Thank you for joining me in the atelier today. If you've enjoyed this lesson, please do like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And if you have comments, questions, or suggestions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section below. In my next lesson, we're going to be moving into pockets, and I'm going to be showing you how to create a beautiful welt pocket with just your hands. You won't want to miss it. I'll see you next time in the atelier.